David Bowie was the Jesus Christ of glam, then Mark Bolan was John the Baptist.
Ziggy Stardust sort of blew T-Rex out of the water, really.
When you're talking about the look of David Bowie, then I think David would freely acknowledge that Lindsay Kemp had the most influence on that. The makeup, making yourself look wildly outrageous.
My generation heard of Lindsay Kemp through David Bowie. Lindsay Kemp had taught mime to him, and he was, you know, quite an icon.
One of the most exciting things I did was work with old Lindsay Kemp, back in where would it be? I can't remember which theatre we did it in, but years ago. It was a combined sort of mixed media show. That was very good.
The girls at the office brought him to... they said, oh, you've got to meet him. And the girls brought him to meet me one night after a performance I was giving at the Little Theatre. We met afterwards, and then he came to visit me at my place. And that's when it all began. He loved, certainly, all the dressing-up element of our time together, and putting on the Pierrot show. During that period, I'm afraid we fell out, sentimental reasons. But sometime later, of course, he asked me to come to London to stage the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust.
Didn't know what time it was and the lights were low. I leaned back on my radio. Some cat was laying down some get it on rock and roll, he said.
I had this huge amount of press clippings and photos of David Bowie. Well, I swapped them so I could get my first guitar.
There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He told us not to blow it, cause he knows it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children use it, let the children use it, let all the children boogie.
I was lucky enough to be in the right time at the right place with the right instincts and got to be one of the messengers. When everybody copped a look at David, they wanted to know. Like that shot of David biting Mick Ronson's guitar, that was, I know, a very important picture in David's career. There was David Bowie filleting Mick Ronson's guitar and obviously relishing it. And so that's, as a visual statement, was very powerful. And obviously, David performed the act, but I got the shot. As we all remember, the climate of the times was a bisexual one, which was certainly something that David promoted in a very overt way. But that was all in the air. This was the time when the lads were all coming out of the closet.
That sexual ambiguity I could relate to, and I think although I knew by that time, or suspected strongly, that I was gay, being bisexual sounded so much more exotic and fashionable.
David, I think, had a Japanese designer who did his beautiful clothes and cut his hair and dyed it, you know, that ghastly, fabulous red. I was mortified when I first saw it, you know. I thought, well, I always encouraged him to be extreme, you know. I didn't really mean that extreme, I mean, but it did the trick.
And Lindsay's love of French author Jean Genet inspired Bowie's next top 10 hit.
There was Lindsay Kemp, of course, doing Flowers, and that's, you know, the Jean Genet novel, and that turned people onto Jean Genet.
And if you mispronounce Jean Genet, you get Jean Genie.
Bowie seemed to be part of this darker side of this more tawdry, vaudevillian, kind of drugged-out look of cheap makeup and glitter, and androgyny and things.
Slashback blazers and ate all your razors while pulling the waiters, talking about Monroe and walking on Snow White.
Another behind-the-scenes influence was David's first wife, Angie Bowie.
I saw how important she was as an energising force. She helped with the costume. She was like the tour manager, and she was always buzzing around David, you know, encouraging the right people to work with him.
I seem to draw a lot of fantasies out of people, a lot of the fan mail I get. A lot of it is awfully nice. I mean, they say, how's your baby and how's your wife?
I think she was probably the most liberated one of everybody, to be quite honest, without going into details about anything at all. I think she maybe was more liberated than David in a certain sense.
It's a god-awful small affair to the girl with the mousy hair.
David Bowie reached number 3 in 1973 with this song from his earlier influential Hunky Dory album.
Well, I was obsessed with sort of David Bowie, and but I must admit I was more into Hunky Dory. You know, I loved the sound of it and everything. Well, I still kind of use it as a sort of reference point sometimes. I like all of them really. I like Is There Life on Mars?
Is there life on Mars?
I think the influence of Bowie can't be underestimated, really, and it was Bowie that told us about Lou Reed and New York Dolls and all these things. I read all about these bands, first of all, in interviews by David Bowie.
When I heard Transformer, at a similar time, I think, to Hunky Dory, I really sort of became obsessed with Lou Reed and went back and bought all the Velvet Underground records.
Bowie had also been influenced by the legendary Lou Reed, and at the height of Ziggy Mania, he repaid the debt by producing Lou's classic solo album, Transformer. In part 2, the Phantom of Rock and the sweetest transvestite of them all.